Hi, Sam.
How are you?
Very well, thank you. You?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Great. Thanks for
Yes.
joining so quickly. I just
Yes, I.
grabbed. I'm just grabbing a coffee.
Oh, okay, okay, thanks. That's okay.
Mhm. So good.
Brown,
He's not here yet.
we needed to know if it was clear on how to do the polling.
What we um can you type, can you chat and welcome? There's some person who's already here. Can you start doing Brown's work,
Okay,
please? Thank you. Use the chat button.
okay.
Thank you. Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to this session. Um, I will just share my screen. You give me a moment to do that, please. Thank you. I see that Brown is back. Can you see my screen? I'm just wondering.
Not yet, it's not come up.
Okay. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Great. Fantastic. So I just like to say welcome to this session. And I see we have a registered list of about 23. So I was wondering if we could give it 2 minutes. How many do we have as we speak? Brown? Now that I'm sharing my screen, I can seem to see numbers.
10 active.
10 active.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, I suppose we should start. So I'll hand over to Brown to get us going. Brown, can you hear me?
Hello, everyone. My name is Brown. Today, we're in this session. We'll have a presentation from Dr. Florence Etta. And before she comes in, we have Samuel Onono, who happens to be our moderator for today. So Samuel Onono is a development economist who has worked for quite some time, about 7 years, in evaluations, and he has worked with leading national and international organizations in sub-Saharan Africa, and he is currently the growth and partnership lead at the PAE Consultancy, which has coordination offices in Dubai, Geneva, and Nairobi. So at this point in time, I would like to allow Samuel to come in. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brown. A good morning, a good afternoon to everyone. Allow me to extend a warm welcome to you all. This will be a presentation of, and I think generally there'll be a discussion on an innovative tool for strengthening monitoring and evaluation systems. It's famous with the name Twende Mbele. I think my Swahili translation would be let us move forward together. Developed by the African Gender and Development Evaluators Network, AGDEN. So at this time, we are privileged to have Dr. Florence Etta, who will take us through this session. A brief about Florence is she is the CEO and the principal consultant at Great International Consultants Limited, Nigeria, which is a monitoring, evaluation, and research social enterprise. She spent better time being a lecturer and a researcher in the Nigerian education system before joining international development practice with the International Development Research Center, IDRC, in Senegal and Nairobi. Florence served as the 6th president and the African Gender Development Evaluators Network. She is active in EVAL SDGs, EVAL Gender Plus, and EVAL Indigenous since their creation in 2015. Most recently, she was elected as a co-vice chair of EVAL SDG, that is in July 2020. So allow me welcome Florence for a brief comment, and then we can proceed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sam. Can everybody hear me okay? Just to say that we can use all of the reactions that BlueJeans allows us. So you can raise your hand, you can share a reaction, a smile, a clap as we go along. I want to thank especially the official volunteer that the EES has provided for this session, Brown Amos Msliska. Brown is Malawian, and He is currently living in Belgium. He's been in monitoring and evaluation for the past 3 years, and he worked with Pump Aid International and World Relief International as the M&E officer for WASH, Health and Nutrition projects as well. He's currently pursuing a Master of Evaluation and Management at the University of Antwerp, Belgium. He's passionate about M&E, and that is what motivates him and his engagement with the EES. I'd like to thank Amos. Sometimes we call him Brown, sometimes we call him Amos, whichever comes to mind first. I'm sure he doesn't mind. So, welcome, Amos. Thank you for the work you've done so far. And thank you, Sam, for the moderating role that you have taken on so graciously. So, this is the session agenda that we have. We've already started the introductions, and now we'll proceed to have introductions of those people who have entered or joined the session. We had thought we would perhaps try to do a poll, and we got a little stumped with the polling software, so we couldn't manage to pull it off for two practical reasons. I am well aware that if you move out of one software situation and enter another, especially in places where the connectivity is problematic, you might be lost somewhere. And we thought, understanding the context in which we sit and in which we work, we thought, okay, if this works and is stable and the BlueJeans is okay for us, let's try and see what we could do with this. So I think we should proceed with the first question. On the other hand, I suggest we can put the responses to the two questions in the chat right away. And as we're chatting, the moderator and Amos, who can see the chat, can tell us how it's going and who's saying what. Did we do that? Now? I can't see any reactions. Can you? Can somebody tell me?
Yes, Hayata is okay with this.
Okay. So let's proceed then and answer the questions in your chat, in the chat box. Which city are you joining us from today? And how would you describe your gender responsive evaluation experience? Would you say it is good? Would you say it is fair? Or would you say it is poor? You can answer both questions in the same chat. And we'll give it maybe a minute or two. And perhaps Brown can tell us as we go along how we're doing in terms of responses coming in. Any response yet? I'm a little impatient, am I not?
Okay, so I'm afraid I would get the pronunciation wrong. It should be Git from Antwerp, who is equally good in gendered evaluations.
Okay.
We have Hayat, who is from Jordan, who is indicating his experiences with gendered evaluation systems is fair. We have Marina. Marina is from Italy. Fomia, who's let me just follow up on her experiences with A should be good if I follow. Yes, her experiences with gendered evaluation systems is good. We have Cecilia from Brasilia, whose experiences with gendered evaluation systems is good. Marina, okay, Marina is contemplating changing her response to experiences with gender devaluation to B, which is fair, good enough. Yeah, we have Titus Mukaya from Kenya, who is my compatriot here in Nairobi. His experiences with gendered evaluation systems is fair. Okay. So keep them coming. I think I've had, if top of my head, probably from 5 or 6 respondents. Responses coming in. I encourage Patrick and the rest to also give us their feel of their experiences with gendered evaluation systems.
Great. Thank you very much, Sam. So shall I proceed? Sam, you're the... Yeah?
Yes. I think keep them coming. We will comment. You probably have smaller sessions to just comment on this. But I think generally the take, if I'm to comment on this, is relatively fair. That participants today have some little or good experiences with gendered evaluation systems. So welcome, and you can take us through to the presentation itself.
Great, fabulous. Thank you so much. I'm particularly delighted that quite a number of you have familiarities, some fairly good. So far, we don't have anybody that says they have none or poor. So that is a good base to start with. So I welcome you. All of you have familiarity with this topic, so we can have a really interesting and robust conversation. Again, I would like to remind you that the title of the presentation is an innovative tool for strengthening monitoring and evaluation systems. And perhaps what we left out of that was the fact that strengthening them towards a more gender responsive nature and characteristic. This presentation is based on work that the Africa Gender and Development Evaluators Network has done with Twendembele. And thank you, Sam, for telling us what Twendembele means in Kiswahili. So Twendembele, for those of you who are familiar, may not even be familiar with it, is a program initiative that is housed in CLEAR Anglophone Africa. CLEAR is the Centers for Learning in Evaluation and Research. There are a couple of centers around the world, and one of the ones in Africa is located in South Africa at the University of Wits University. And Twende is a collaborative partnership of African governments who are basically interested in using and supporting the development of M&E to make the performance of government, accountability, service delivery, poverty reduction, gender equality stronger. It started out in 3 countries with a study that we actually, Twende commissioned for Agden. When I say we, I mean Agden. To do in 3 countries, starting out in Benin, South Africa, and Uganda, and later on in the cycle, Ghana, Niger, and Kenya joined. So currently it is in 6 African countries, generating quite a lot of information and data, and it is funded, has so far been funded by the UK DFID and the William and Flora Stewart Foundation. So Agden is basically the partner that implemented this work, both of them in 2016 and 2019 as studies. So Agden itself was established in 2002 by the African Evaluation Association and UN Women. It's the only special interest group of the African Evaluation Association, and its mission is there for you to see. We have a vision of Africa and African development and even world development that is equitable, just, fair, and all of that, because development practice, development programming, M&E is infused and imbued and coming from a perspective of equality. Gender equality, social equity, and all kinds of equities that make sure that no one is left behind. That is our mission. That is what we started working since 2004 when we've had our first meeting. To date, we have, as AGDEN, the Africa Gender and Development Evaluators Network, has had quite a number of outputs. I just want to highlight three of the more, enduring ones. The first one, when we started out, of course, was like our, primary responsibility was trying to see how to generate, document, and talk about and spread the word about gender responsive evaluation, which is based on human rights, participation, ensuring that people have a voice, ensuring that development practice is not top-bottom with beneficiaries powerless and voiceless. So the first thing we developed was the manual. And then and that was the work on the manual started very early on. In 2006, we had our first training session for members. And by 2008, we got the grant from the Ford Foundation to work on the manual. For 4 years, we were toiling away doing research and writing, and that came out as a document at the end of the project in 2010 and was published in 2012, the first version. Work on it continues. And then in 2018, we worked with other regional evaluation networks, with RELAC and EvalGender Plus, to work on a culturally responsive curriculum for transformative evaluation practice. That's the second major output. And in 2016, so I skipped the gender diagnostic for a purpose. In 2016, the first version of the gender diagnostic matrix was developed. The photo beside the photo on the screen, on the right side of the screen, shows an activity which is really what AGDEN has done for the longest time. It's almost like its signature activity, training people on gender responsive human rights evaluation practice. This was during the training of the parliamentarian in Kenya. It was with the Evidence-Informed Decision-Making Caucus of the Parliament of Kenya. So that was a very exciting thing we did in 2019, before September 2019. So that was that. Before then, we had done the training for the staff of Parliament and parliamentary services. So why is a gender diagnostic matrix important? One primary reason, which is perhaps pervasive, and I will respond to that by talking about the AGDEN journey. We were created as a network, as a special interest group, to try and engender and make development practice, especially monitoring and evaluation of it, its programming, its workings, human rights responsive, and gender sensitive. That was how it started out. And the first thing we did, of course, was try and do some research, finding out what the status is. Do people understand what it is? What do they use? How are they doing it? And this work, the first meeting was 2004. In 2006, we got ourselves trained with the early tools. And with those early tools, as members of AGDEN, we started out as 24 members, 16 and then 24. We continued to do the research, and by 2010, we had developed a fair corpus of information and knowledge to make this into, to give this to the world. And so we thought the major strategy for doing this was training and talking and leaflets and stuff like that, dissemination of the information that we had collected. That gender responsive and gender and human rights responsive evaluation was a desired thing. People desired to do it, but they didn't know how to do it. And so we started out trying to, coming from the perspective of using the greatest tools that we have in evaluation at the time and still today, the criteria. We're looking at the OECD DAC evaluation criteria. These were notoriously difficult to translate into practice. And yet they were rapaciously popular. Everybody was using them everywhere. So the issue was trying to say, how can we make evaluation practice more gender responsive? And that's what we spent the entire life doing. At that time, until we started the gender diagnostic matrix, we were going from the bottom up. We were going from evaluation of projects and programs. So we're looking at the evaluator and the program or the project, how to make that work at that level, responsive to rights, to human rights and gender sensitive. But the truth is, we have trained at every AFRIA conference, Agden has a training. We have trained at the EES twice. We have trained at the AEA once. We have trained at any spaces we have available, we do the training. And yet, a couple of months ago, at a global virtual workshop conference like this, EvalGender Plus was giving a virtual conference, and the general conversation, general consensus was that it is still, people still don't know how to do gender and equity responsive or human rights responsive evaluation. Have we failed? Well, we're still wondering. So what is the utility of this tool? The fact that this tool is coming away from the level of the project and program and looking at a system, looking at higher levels, the country level and the systems level, what we call MDAs in development language parlance, the ministries, departments and agencies, is the fact that it's coming at that level. It uses quantitative analysis and allows us to go beyond words, sometimes numbers, and what you can do with numbers tell a better story or more. It visualizes better, so it can speak to more people. And it provides a consistency in terms of how to go about it, the process, and of course the results. If the process is consistent, we're hoping that the results would be, in a way, generalizable. The common language, and this common language can be used among peers, so there's more understanding between people. It also provides a multi-level analysis, and that assures that it is complexity sensitive, which is the story of our time. And finally, it gives us a holistic view of this problem. And then we begin to understand that this problem is not just trying to work at the level of the project. So this slide is just telling us very briefly about the tool. The column on the left of the slide just tells you that it was developed in 2016 based on 3 country studies. I have told you that: Uganda, South Africa, and Benin. It is both a tool and a methodology. As I said, it's developed by Agden, supported by Twende, so both of us have ownership of it. And it is basically used for interrogating the responsiveness of national evaluation policies, meaning that high-level conversation or documentation and commitments, and national evaluation systems, which are underneath the structures that basically implement or operationalize the policies. This presentation is based on the 2019 study, but of course, the products and outputs from the 2016 were the ones that were now used again and developed further in 2019. The study was of the Kenyan National Integrated Monitoring and Evaluation System. Those of you who are familiar, it was one of the very early, very ambitious and very detailed investments by the Kenyan government. And it was commissioned by the Monitoring and Evaluation Directorate, which is a department of the National Treasury and Planning. And of course, the support was by Twende. So the structure and the application. The matrix, the gender diagnostic matrix, is composed of 57 items. which are in these 57 items are in 5 analytical categories, and the matrix itself is composed of 2 distinctly different matrices to correspond to the levels, the National Evaluation Policy level and the National Evaluation Systems level. So how are they applied? The NEP items, the NEP has 30 items and the NES has 27 items. And the items are used and administered in an interview setting. We put them in an Excel sheet because it's easier to capture. You can put them in a table, it really doesn't matter. And the interview responses are basically scored using a nominal score from 0 to 3, where 0 is non-existent or whatever it is we're pursuing and trying to capture in the system or the policy, and 3 is excellent and implemented. If you're familiar with national evaluation systems, so sometimes policies are there, but they're not implemented, or they are haphazardly implemented or something. So that's why we put that's why the scores are there. And because we convert the qualitative language, which we don't miss, we actually keep and save in analysis, or basically for embellishing the results, we can have averages and we can generate dashboards. This slide is showing you the 5 categories or components of the matrix. And these 5 categories have been, in a sense, extracted and oscillated from the literature and the discourse, the gender equality, feminist discussions, the sociology of development, the politics of development. So that's how these 5 key components were identified. And in each of these key components, the items are specific to the component, but the items are not the same numbers. So for example, gender equality has 11 items and sustainability has 5 items, and participation has 6 or 7 items. I'll just ask if there are any questions that are coming out of the chat that we need to respond or hold on to. So here is the first matrix. This matrix is the one that is the NEP matrix. And what we have done with the next NEP matrix is that you determine which of this is available in the country and which one you want to use for your analysis. In Kenya, for example, we used the Constitution and the draft National Evaluation Policy because there was none at the time. There's a draft that has been sitting there, but it has not been approved by government or legislated by Parliament. So the document is there, but it has not done the work it's supposed to do. The department is there, but it's struggling to get this document implemented in a way that it should. So we just want to show you that this component we're showing you on this screen is a gender equality component, and each of those items in the second column, those are the items that we use for the interview. The next set of columns are the ones where you score. You just reflect the score of the person, the interviewee, there. So if the person says we have done very badly, no, there's nothing there, you can just put a star in the 0. And they said, no, we've done very, very well in this particular response to that particular question, question 1, you put it as a 3. The last column on the right, evidence. If the person says, the interview might say to the interviewee, you say you've done very well in relation to the NEP, the policy proposing and engaging or suggesting reducing or eliminating poverty. You say the country's done very well, but why are you saying that? And the respondent would probably say something like, oh, yes, yes, this is that we have, first and foremost, we have the policy, and this section of the policy, section 2.3 or section 12.6, says this. That is the kind of thing we say we use that as evidence so that we can confirm and cross-check later. So that is the NEP. Again, this is only one component. I was hoping that I could send the entire NEP to the group. And I can still do that if we have the list of things. So the next one is the NES, the National Evaluation System. In this matrix, we are looking at the institutional arrangements, how capacities are strengthened, the processes, and the procedures for providing and strengthening gender responsive, gender and equity responsive evaluations, or indeed monitoring. Again, the difference is that you may have a national policy statement, a national evaluation policy, or a constitution that is very, very, very pro equality, equity, whether it is geographical equity, because that's a major problem well, I don't know that it's a major problem, but you live with it in Kenya, or this person is coastal, this is northeast, we're constantly balancing for that kind of a situation. So equity and gender equality is major. And so these items are trying to find out whether the institutions themselves, the ministries, the departments, the agencies have within the institution itself ways and arrangements and procedures and processes that support gender and other equalities. And so the same way is similar, just the items are different. For example, in the second item, it says, in Kenya, there is a Ministry of Public Service, Youth, and Gender Affairs. So structurally, if we go back to the first item, it says, does the framework identify adequate structure or architecture for gender responsive evaluation? And the person says, yes, yes, yes. And we're like, okay, how would you describe that? Very good, implementable? They'll say yes. Because there are 3 or 4 things I can name we have. We have the gender machinery, we have the ministry itself, we have the commission, the Human Rights Commission, which is government. Those 3 institutions are there and they're working and they're vibrant. Fine. And so we're saying, when we go to the ministry, we say, how well is the ministry, for example, supporting your evaluations? This is another ministry, Ministry of Health, for example. There is a gender ministry, there's a gender commission. How well is it doing that? So the idea here is to see how the systems themselves, the systems within the country are doing that. So the notion is the same. If people they don't know, we identify don't know responses, so we are not using them to muddy the results. So we're only using the results that are solid and fair. If people don't know, and if they don't respond, we do not, again, use that. In this slide, I'm telling you, basically explaining the scoring system. And this is important because it makes sure, it gives some kind of standardization of whether it's me interviewing or somebody else interviewing. Of course, it's difficult, but the training is a little rigorous. We go through making sure the items are understood, making sure we understand how we would pose the questions, and if the question is unclear, how we do it. And so this is what we use for scoring. Or in your agency, and it says no, the person says they're non-existent. The interpretation from a gender matrix, a diagnosis matrix point of view, is that the structures are not there, so it is a 0. If the person says yes, the structures are there, it's been created, but it does not seem to be working as well as the intentions were, there's a gender machinery. Sometimes, there's a machinery, gender machinery created, but it's not working. It's been forgotten. It's not, in terms of from year to year when budgets are created, it has a smallest budget and it cannot do very much. And so we're saying, if that's the response a person is giving us, we would translate that to say there's limited evidence of working towards gender responsiveness. And we give that a score of 1. A score of 2, and a score of 3 says that structure or that what we're looking for is in full existence and it's being implemented. The greatest problem with policy statements and intentions is the implementation. So if it's existing and it's fully implemented, fabulous, you have the highest score of 3. If the person says, I don't know, or they're not sure, we don't give a score. And if there's a no response, we put a 9 to be clear that we're not mixing up the data. On this slide, I'm basically using to show you how the analysis is done. I want to draw your attention to two distinctly different things. One is, you notice the first column is the numbering. The category or component are numbered for a purpose. Each has a unique number. So this is, the first one is the gender equality of the NEP. The first item is item 1.1. The next category, for example, is participation. Participation is category 3. And we number them 3.13. That way, every item is distinguishable. You can talk about the same item across locations and situations or governments. So it gives you the standardization that is particularly useful for the language to talk across situations. That's one. Second thing is that the color coding is useful because what we do with the data is we aggregate all of the data. For example, the Kenya case, we had 36 interviews from 20 different institutions. So we aggregate for each of these items what the responses were, and we find the average. And the average, of course, has to be between 1, 0, and 3. And we convert the colors. We just use red, yellow, and green to indicate what the average score for that particular item is. So the last column is showing you that of the 6 items that we extracted from the gender equality component, 5 of them are saying the score is a 2, and 1 of them is talking about the score of 1. If we had enough time, we can tell you about the story around that item 4.1 that has a red, orange. It looks like it's supposed to be red, but sometimes the colors come out funny. So this is the NEP dashboard. So the dashboard is used to reflect and show the results in a way that is easy to understand. And this is a participation dashboard that shows that some of the items of the dashboard shows that all of them were a 2, so there was no 1 here. This is actual results from the Kenya case. Underlying the entire work is this analytical framework. And the analytical framework responds to the 2 levels, in fact, the 3 levels. The blue, the entire circle of blue, is the macro, is a big country level. And that is the macro level, and that is where the NEP, that is where we look for the NEP. The NEP is supposed to cover the entire country, the entire system, the entire situation, and so we're looking there for it. Inside of the macro-national level situation are the institutions, the meso level we call it, and that is where the NES is operational, or that's where we're looking for data for the NES. And beyond the institutions, we can now go down to the individual projects or programs, and that is the micro level. So the analytical level gives us what we call it is a national evaluation ecosystem, that it is impossible to try and detach each of these levels and say you're dealing with them and think that you're going to have a transformational effect or change in some kind of a fundamental way. It's not possible. This particular slide just shows you the identified components in each of these levels. So what are we looking at when we're talking about the macro level? What should we be looking at when we're talking about the meso level or the micro level? That is just giving that. So that, the point about this final slide, this slide, is that you need to look at the national evaluation system, not piecemeal, but as a total ecosystem. We have been trying to look at this little pieces. So let's do a policy. Efforts are right now. For example, Barbara Bernstein, I think, did the first study on the national evaluation policies. It's just been recommissioned by the Global Parliamentarians Forum on Evaluation, Global Evaluation, whatever, GPEF, Global Parliamentarians Evaluation Forum, to update that information. We can have all the policies in the world that are good. For example, Kenya, the Constitution of Kenya is amazingly gender responsive and human rights sensitive. There is a whole section on a Bill of Rights that gives women, the people living with disabilities, people in different situations, that gives them rights. So based on that, the absolute score would have been a 3. But in terms of its implementation, you come down from there, at the level of implementation at the institutional level, that totally evaporates. So that is why this ecosystem analytical framework is particularly valuable. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is really the end of this presentation. The next thing is another question for you before we go into a short Q&A.
If I may come in, sure. Just a small follow-up.
Mm-hmm.
I know you must have mentioned it in commenting around the evaluation ecosystem, but Hayat from Jordan is asking something that might be linked. So I would just maybe call out that you give it more focused breakdown. He is asking, what if the country has no national evaluation policy? Can the framework be used? So this then I think responds to, can you just do it at the meso or the micro, and you do your reporting, but the evaluation systems here are check or they are out of system. So at what point, or do we still go with a bit of have to do it wholesomely, not in pieces?
That's a very, very good question. And all I will say is I'll come up here at the national evaluation. This slide, can you still see my screen?
Yes, it's visible.
So what we have shown in the brackets there is that you can look at each or any of these particular documents that are available in most countries. Is there a constitution? So you do that, you do the analysis with the constitution. What about the laws in a particular setup? For example, if you're dealing with, let's say you're dealing with issues, a problem of housing, is there a national housing policy? You may also have, from time to time, what we call national development strategies or plans. Or, like in the case in Kenya, there was a draft policy was been sitting there for 10, 12 years and had been revised a number of times. So yes, they can be used. You just need to identify which of these high-level, macro-level policy documents you want to use as the basis for your analysis of how responsive that particular policy is to gender-sensitive evaluation. So you identify your sector, but you don't remain at the ministry. For the NEP, you go to the national policy, if there's a policy. If there's no policy that is targeted at that sector, you go see what the constitution says. In Uganda, for example, they have a constitution that is similarly very, very gender and equity responsive. So yes, it is possible. But the lesson for us from the gender diagnostic is that these are not dismembered entities. The national level should be reflected or should be mirrored in the systems level and further down. So far, we have been treating them like they're, oh, I can address this and address that. You may be addressing one sector, but it is useful to take a look at the bigger picture, the ecosystem. That's what we're saying. Thank you very much. So we're back to the poll. Again, we would I'll defer to you, Sam. How are you going to do this? How do you want to do this?
Brown has just indicated that is now very okay with using Mentimeter. Just sharing the questions that he can give us. I understand he just gives us a code, and in that code we can give in our responses and ask.
Okay.
The results.
Okay.
Yes. So Brown, go ahead if you can share.
Yeah, can I ask a question before the poll?
Sure, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Florence. That was a good presentation. So I have a couple of questions on your presentation. The first one is in terms of not the 5 components. I wonder what was your how do you call basis to limit only on those 5 components. There are other things you may need to consider. So I would like to know, why only the 5 components? The other one is when you are talking about gender responsiveness, it is how you do, first it's how you do your evaluations, how you have all the things you are mentioned. At the same time, it depends on also the manpower you have and the resource allocation. How much resource allocation is gender responsive, whether it's for evaluation or for any intervention. So have you considered that? The last question is now on the target group. If you ask those questions it depends on the type of answer you are getting for these interviews. It highly depends on the type of interview you are asking, because if you go to evaluators, they might have a different perspective on whether it's on the policy or on the system. They can give you a different answer than if you ask someone like at manager level or at a ministerial level, because that might have like a political implication if you rate a country in those lower scale. But for the evaluator, he knows all those concepts, and then he can also be open and can criticize the problems, whether it's in the policy or in the systems. For others, they may not see and understand all those things. At the same time, they might be like bias in terms of giving the real assessment. So whom are you actually asking those questions?
Great. Great questions. Thank you very much for those. In respect to the components, we did a lot of work. I told you we started out with research. Did a lot of work in relation to what are the key components that you want to put in a matrix like this. And what we did was those components are based on the gender and development literature, the research we had done ourselves before, and also what we had found coming from what we're talking about, the ground level, the micro level practice and understandings we had. So that is theory-based. The components are completely theory-based from the literature and conversations and discourses around the key things. Then you don't want to have an instrument that is too long. In fact, because the numbers of the items are that long, depending, as you say, on the person, the knowledge of the person who's answering, some of the interviews were anywhere between 1 hour and 2.5 hours. So, it is important. Which brings me to your second question, the last question, talking about who. The whole point here is you're targeting policy level and systems level. You're not looking at the evaluator themselves. You're looking at managers and people who are directly engaged with the policy and policy documentation. So, for instance, when we dealt with ministries, the Ministry of Planning in Kenya, for example, sends officers to every ministry that is supposed to support the monitoring and evaluation within those ministries. These are like mid-level workers, but they can tell you whether or not there are any policies in those departments where they're working. And the greatest, the strength of that is we ask for the evidence. If there's an evidence, that's why this is very, very document-based. It's at both the policy level and the processes. We ask, where is this you're saying? Show us the document, or show us the blue paper or brown paper, or what, those kinds of things. So targeting, we're not asking you what you feel. We're asking you what you know, what you see, what you do, based on the agreements and statements on the ground. In terms of manpower, your second question is related to what we do at the micro level. At the micro level, which is basically our first product as Agden, we have talked about, and most of the places we have talked about is at that level. How do you make evaluators understand how to do gender responsive evaluation? In a sense, the how to. This is at the systemic level. So we're looking at the systems themselves and the policies at that level. So this is why we're saying we have come from the top and the bottom, and we're making a holistic. We're saying to do this, we need to look at this holistically. Thank you very much. Can we proceed? Any other question that we need to take before we go on to this poll? We have some small group work to do.
So probably the link is not working proper. So probably we'll again go the way we did for the first polling. We can take question 1. It's a yes or no. So give us a yes or no, and then have more of a skip logic. Okay. So Cecilia says it works. But I think there's a skip logic. If you give a yes on question 1, then you can go and answer question 2 as presented in the link. If you have a no for question 1, then I think it terminates at that. So probably Brown can give us the answer after I give them 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
2 minutes to take the poll. Yes. Very well. I think we can close the poll at that. Probably Brown would tell us what he's seeing from his dashboard in terms of
Does he want? I can stop sharing and he can share his.
yes, his screen here.
If I stop sharing, Brown can share his screen.
Okay, thank you, Cecilia. I see you could only vote for question 2. For question 1, your answer was not really. I had contemplated having a skip logic on this, so probably if you couldn't respond to question 1, then I would not validate your answer to question 2. I don't know how you're feeling on that. Sorry, apologies. Yes, Brown, you can show us your screen. Okay.
I think maybe there's a problem with the link because I can only see 2 responses.
Yes, so my take could be that we only had two votes coming in, 2 people sending in their responses.
That's
Yes,
fair.
so yes, that's fair. I think generally, I don't know, following up on a second question that came from one of us is that probably it was, we might know in theory how to go around gendered evaluations, but have not had the practicals. So in this light, probably very few. Just anticipating, probably just 2 or 3 people have had experiences with this, and we encourage you to evaluate more and help programming teams get it right. At this time, I think we would want to go into the group sessions and have a bit of deliberations on a few things, and then we'll come back and close. Brown will take us through the groups. He'll allocate us into groups and then guide us on how to join. And then basically what we would do is once in your groups, you can use a few minutes, 1 or 2, to get to know each other. In that context, have one person being a note taker who will report back in plenary, and then take up roles. So probably it will be a session of having a real interview. So one has to be the interviewee and the other person being an interviewer, assuming you'll be 3 people or so. And then you can have your responses come in as 0, 1, 2, or 3 as was guided, just to have a feel of how the tool works. Then at the end of it, we'll close and come back into plenary just to have some reportings.
Can I just say that looks like there's just the 5 of us left, so I don't know what rooms we're going to go into. There's not enough to go to any room. I just wondered whether the numbers that I can see are different from the ones you can see.
Yes, we are 5. So if you're 5, then it means we only have 2 active participants.
Precisely.
Yes.
So perhaps we should do it from do it right away in plenary. Just do it here.
Yes. You can go ahead.
So my suggestion would be we would, if we go back to
your presentation, please.
To the presentation, and we would show the slide that tells us what to do in breakouts, but there's no breakout, so we'll do all of that in plenary. I think I can't share my screen. Perhaps you're still, can you stop sharing, Brown, please? Because it doesn't look as if I can share my screen. you stop sharing your screen, then we might be able to share my screen.
I already stopped sharing.
Well, that's interesting. I have 2 questions. Cecilia has 2 questions. That's really strange. I can't. Can you share your?
Maybe we can take these questions as you.
Okay.
Yes.
As we try to share the screen. Why is it doing that? Okay.
Can you see my screen?
I can see your screen. I can see you. No, not your screen. I can see your video. I can see you in video. I can't see your screen. But if we can see your screen,
Yeah.
yes. Perfect. So if you just
Good morning.
Good morning. Presentation mode. Hi, Cecilia.
Thank you, Florence. Thank you, Sam, for this great presentation and for presenting us this great tool. I'm not very familiar with national level evaluations. I just can speak about my experience, my studies, what I perceive. Also, I live in Brazil, but I'm not Brazilian, so this is not my country. I can just speak and talk about, again, it's my perception and what I see around me and through the life of people. But one question is, and this is from my practice. For example, what do you think about conducting this type of evaluations in countries who are notoriously corrupt, and Brazil is one of them. So everybody knows that the Brazilian national level, micro, meso level public sphere, it's completely, let's say, spoiled. Public money is just disappearing. Even during this COVID, after a few months of lockdown and starting providing all kind of health measures and support, it was 15 states ended up in being processed in the court because the money which was allocated for COVID protection has just vanished. And this is the case not only in Brazil, this is the case in many other countries and many other, of course, African countries, Asian countries. So how it is possible to conduct any kind of public evaluation, national level, meso, micro evaluation, when part of the evaluation is looking at, okay, if something didn't happen, hasn't been implemented, why? And definitely you have to reach to the finances. Okay, where is the money? And then the money, everybody knows, it's ended up in some private pockets. So for me, this is a contradiction which completely kind of eliminates the possibility of having a genuine evaluation and results in this kind of public sphere. So, yeah.
Okay, let's. I want to thank you very much for that question. Again, my reaction to that is, in thinking about this, the first question to ask oneself is that, okay, we talk about values in evaluation, but what exactly are we looking to do? Is it an evaluation of a particular project, of a particular policy, or a particular program? If that is what you're doing, if that is the object of your interrogation, then you're automatically operating at the micro level. And at that level, to make the to bring the human rights and gender sensitivity into the evaluation, you literally need to go through all of the steps, from the tools to the methods to the indicators, even to the in terms of the reporting and the voices in the reports, which voices are heard, your analysis. All of that needs to be gender responsive in a significant way, because you want to change. The intention is to change, to transform society so that it can be more equitable. So the tools and the techniques for the micro level are slightly different, because at that level, you're looking much more at the behavioral dimensions of the people who are either implementing the project or policy, or the people in whose for whom the project or policy is being implemented. So at the micro level, you're looking more and more at behaviors and outcomes that are dependent on a particular intervention. At the level of the diagnostic, the gender diagnostic, we are looking, yes, some of it, much of it is really not about people's behavior in that sense. We're looking at processes for the systems for making things work. I'd read about money. We found out, for example, in relation to budgeting and sustainability, that there is, in the Kenyan case, the 2019 study, that the budget for the particular department of evaluation that is supposed to support national evaluation, there's no guarantee that it is going to get larger. And yet, at the time of the study, it was small. And so, in a sense, what we're saying is, especially for the NEP and the NES, a lot of what we're looking at are institutional structures, processes, and procedures that are gender responsive. And these are, in a sense, things that have been agreed upon and put down in paper. So we're looking for evidence that they exist. So, in a sense, the question that I would pose to you, Cecilia, when you ask about how do you deal with that, corruption is a global reality. It happens everywhere. And I know that the effects are really devastating wherever it happens. There is no excusing it. That is true. Yeah. But what are we looking to do in the evaluation? Is the evaluation of corruption or the influence of corruption on a particular program, project, or policy? So we have to be clear what it is we're looking at as evaluators. But once you're evaluating a project or a program or a policy, your level of analysis is different. It is the micro. You're inhabiting the micro part of the national ecosystem. And for that, the gender matrix is not very, very helpful. You need another set of tools that Agden can provide, and we've provided in other training sessions. So it's just to identify that they must also reflect the gender equality dimensions. These components must be there, but using the tools that we use for evaluation, the standards, the processes, the methods, the indicators. I don't know if I've answered your question, Cecilia.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Florence.
Thank you very much.
And then the other, yes, the second one, the second question. I don't know if others have other questions. Just
I was wondering whether we should ask others. If they don't have them, we can come back to your question. Cecilia, is that okay for you?
Yes, of course.
So we can't go into groups, but I was hoping that we could at least take a look at what we are asking to do for the breakout groups, because the questions are taken. We have only 15 minutes left, 15 or 20.
Yes, around 17 minutes. Okay. Probably mine, I think I'll have something small to follow up for younger evaluators like myself and Brown. I think close to what Cecilia asked, the politics of evaluation. I was part of an evaluation in Somalia around the GEC project, the Educate Girls Challenge project, and one external evaluation commented that we had, sunk so deep into the politics of evaluation, and the results are, we lost track in reporting impact. This being very close to government operations, I think the impact of politics of evaluation would even be enormous. How then do you mentor in your sessions for some of us to wage this? Because I know you've done it for a while and you know how to, keep your head high and stay focused. Myself, I might be swamped and I get lost in it. So just a quick bit of advisory on how to keep at the boundaries that you've set in this framework, just to get the result as they should be, without losing track. I think that would be mine in this context.
Great. A great question. I think most of us as evaluators remember times and situations when in our histories, in our journeys, in our evaluation journeys, we made real terrible gaffes. I can remember distinctly one evaluation I had to do very early in my international development career. The key thing is to understand that the evaluation is a political undertaking, and to the extent that the side you take, Martha has a question. Maybe Martha can answer that, because I can defer to her in this conversation in relation to evaluation journeys. The position you take is a political position, but all I will say is stick to the evaluation questions and try all you can to garner the evidence to respond to the specific evaluation question. What you need to do is interrogate the question from the very beginning and involve, this is where Michael Quinn-Patton's visualization focus is useful. What is the evaluation for the users and for use? What do they want to use the evaluation for? And are the questions relevant for that? So that's what I would say. Remember, it's a political undertaking. You would be, whether you decide to do that or not, it will be taken as a political statement, whatever the results you are, and keep your conclusions as close to the original intention as possible. It is very possible to be misrepresented or misunderstood. The key thing is to engage, make sure you engage with the commissioners and the managers in relation when you're responding to intended use by intended users. Thank you. Martha had a question, and we are running pretty short of time, I don't think. I'm not sure if we can do this.
My quick question is, can we get a copy of your slides? I really love your framework, and I think it is useful because, I mean, in Canada, yes, we do consider gender, but not to the same extent as, say, UN agencies do. It comes up occasionally. And I think that your framework would be a good way to educate our users of evaluation on how they can incorporate gender into the evaluations.
Yes, in fact, I tried to share the matrix, the full matrix, all the items of the matrix, the two matrices, the NEST and the NEP, before, and I asked how I could do that. I know that when it was a confab, when I registered, it was possible, but then when we now moved to the WOVA, it wasn't very clear how I could upload that. And I asked the organizers, but I don't think I got a good enough response. Maybe I asked too late. I think I asked about 2 days ago, but they didn't tell me. I can actually share both my presentation, the slides, and the matrices themselves, if you would like that. And the most important thing, really, what we want to do going forward is to see how we can continue to do the work on the matrices. We, for example, in 2019 discovered that we needed another matrix simply for documents, to analyze documents using the same scoring system, so we can tell, for example, whether the responses we have from people are sufficiently close to the documentation that we got. So yes, I'm happy to do that, but we're also happy to work with people to help us further develop this tool and extend and expand its use. I'm very, very delighted, Martha, to walk this path with you.
Thank you so much. You have my email, so
Yes,
I'll
yes,
just
I
leave
do.
it there.
I'll
Okay,
send it.
thanks.
Thank you, Martha.
Thanks, Florence.
So can we just take a quick look at what we were supposed to do at the breakout rooms and basically just talk about it?
Yes, sure. Right. You can see my screen?
Yes, yes, we can see your screen. Thank you. I can at least.
Okay. Okay. So probably just to comment, I think what was to come out of it is have the practical feeling of how this metric works. Review the items from the one component only, or if you had the time, probably would go into all. But at this time, I think the one that was prioritized was gender. And then, compile, which I think was direct averaging, and then, color them, do a color code, and come back and present. Just probably to check in with Florence, this would just be hypothetical, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But
Yes.
I think let's realistically ask people what they think about
Yes.
what we're asking them to do in 10 minutes. Is it feasible? Is it possible? How do they feel? There's just 3 people here now with us.
Can you go back to the slides that set out the framework, the 3 dimensions? Because I think if we're going to discuss it, it's good to have it right in front of us.
Yes. Sam, can you go back to the slide that has, let's say, the NEP or the NES?
Okay. This.
And put it in presentation mode would be nice. If you just keep going back up, I will tell you when you get to the slide.
You can see this?
No, we can't.
It will take time to come up.
I can see it.
Oh, you can, I can't. Interesting. Okay.
So I'm at the 5 components, so probably just one slide ahead would give me the NEP.
Yeah, the NES. So what slide number is that?
This should be 13.
Okay, it should probably be 14 if you see.
14. Yes, 14 is NES.
NEP or NES, either one, anyone.
Okay, at NES.
Can you refresh your screen? What's going on here for me?
Just give it a quick reboot. If it helps. You can see it?
Just hold on. No, I think it's having some difficulty here. Oh.
Let me see. Okay. Maybe.
Technology,
Brown,
we
if
love
you
it
can
and
see
hate it.
This is just crazy. I don't know what it was I touched, and it says Sam is currently sharing. Are you sure you want to take over? No, I don't want to take over his screen.
Just confirm if you can see. I'm on page 15 of the slides.
Well, to be quite honest, I can't. My screen's gone black because it's refusing for me to cancel. Oh God in heaven, technology is mad. But go ahead. If others can see you, I have the slides. I have printed them out, so it's okay. I can follow.
So,
Go ahead.
Martha, if you can confirm, this is what you wanted us to comment on.
14, yes, yes.
14, eh?
I'm
14.
wondering, Ida, can you see the slides?
Yes,
Any-
but I would like to say I'm sorry because I get the presentation late, but it's really interesting as you, and it's good to put this slide again, I think, to see it. And thank you, and I'm sorry not to be in the beginning.
Okay, so you can see it now?
Yes, yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
okay,
we can see it.
I guess one of the things that's interesting to me, it's difficult to score in one sense, in that the national evaluation policy doesn't explicitly refer to a lot of stuff, but there are other policies that do.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the net results in Canada is, as I said before, it isn't always included in evaluation. So they would score pretty low on some of this, despite having a lot of other things in place that support gender equity.
Yes, I agree with you there, but I also think that is why we need to look at each of the items that supports. For example, we put a lot of thought into the specific items, and the idea was really not to base the items on people's feelings or emotions, but actual practices and experiences of documentation, documents that guide behaviors of people that are in policy making decision situations.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I
Yes.
mean, it would be interesting if, say, the Canadian Evaluation Society took a look at this and did some advocacy, because it wouldn't be in opposition to other things that are in place. It would simply serve to further support.
Yeah.
I like this.
The idea, Martha, was we were very. I, for example, when we looked at the Kenyan Constitution, was amazed at the level of support that it has given for human rights, for gender equality rights, for all of those. And yet, on the flip side, the Constitution itself suggested that, for example, a specific one that has to do with laws, that no official position of government should have positions, for example, institutions of parliament, there should be no one gender should have a 2/3 majority. And that was supposed to be passed into law. And if it was not done within a particular time frame, the parliament itself would stand dissolved or was in danger of dissolution. Do you know, since 2010, when that constitution was passed, that particular law has not been able to be passed by the parliament. And the last year, there was a threat. This attorney general threatened to dissolve parliament on the basis of that incapacity. So you have, at the level of documentation, national policy documents, whether it's a sectoral policy or a constitution that is supportive of equity and equality and all of these nice things, human rights, but then you come down to the institutions and they are not linking vertically with these documents that promise so much.
Yeah, and enforcement
Yes.
of it is
Yes.
a major thing,
So that
because
is why we're saying, when we score you a 2, we're saying it is there, but it is not implemented.
yes, exactly.
So Yes, it will be interesting. That's one. Our hope was that we would find partners and people who will be interested and willing to go to the next level of this is a tool, so we can always make it better, we can always make it sharper, we can always make it easier, and perhaps extend the use. But we are coming to a close. We just want to, since my screen is not working, Sam, I just want to ask you to move on to the closure so we can close this.
Just to comment, in Kenya, we have the tendency of engaging, experts in doing very nice documents, and then we hand them over to, people who have no capacity to understand these things.
We have
Then,
1 minute,
then
Sam.
they mess it.
1 minute.
Let's trying to get there. So the last one was the
No,
quiz.
let's go to the closure, please. We have
Okay.
less than a minute. We have 1 minute.
Okay. So,
Thank you, Florence. Thank you.
thank you,
Yes,
thank you
thanks
so
so
much.
much,
So,
Florence.
Thank
yes,
you,
yes,
Martha.
yes.
I will send. I know Cecilia. Martha, do you know Ida? You can share whatever I sent to you with Ida, right?
Yes, oh,
Thank you.
certainly,
Yeah.
certainly.
Yes. Just want to thank you all and ask whether this has been useful for you at all. And I pledge to keep the conversation going. I want to thank you for staying to the end. I want to thank Brown for the support and Sam for the wonderful moderation. Thank you very
so
much.
much. Thank you so
Have a
much.
good day.
Well, thank you all of
Thank
you.
you.
Have a good day as well.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. My system froze.